The radiator that I'm going to use in this, and I'm going to show you the reason why. We are now here at the cooling system. This is what, remember, this is my thought process for building this car. What do I think will be the best solution, in the long run? Yeah, as in, trying to get parts for it or whatever. Custom radiator, there's a good chance I'm probably going to have to do it just because. I tried to find one that was, double the size of the thickness of this, which is a stock radiator for the 4000 normally aspirated 2 or 10 valve. This is the stock radiator setup for the 2.3 liter 20 valve 7A motor in the Coupe Quattro. 3,600 pound vehicle with AC, and it used 2 radiators. This is actually an Quattro radiator, but it's virtually identical to the one that was in the 90 Coupe Quattro. I just used this as a reference. And that one I'll tell you here in just a bit what it is. But what I did to just pretty much, figure out where my baseline was, is that I took the measurements of this. I did not measure, this is just completely rough, mind you. Rough as in just square area. This is not the size, because the capillary tubes could be thinner in this, could be thicker in this. The capillary tubes could be thicker and thinner, and like in that, you never know. And the only way to really create or figure out the exact volume is that, you got to fill them full of water, completely drain it, figure out what they had in it. It's not that, because I have a feeling I'm going to be going to a custom radiator, but I just need to get this thing going and have expansion possibilities. So I figured out what this is a stock radiator from the 4000, which was 317.97 cubic inches of core space. That's what I figured this out to be. This, which is pretty much identical to the UR Quattro setup and the Coupe Quattro, normally aspirated car that we had here in America, I figured this thing out to 545.31 cubic inches. Not counting, yet remember, I don't know the size of the capillaries, and I'm not going to take into consideration the difference of fins from here to here. Then this right here is I just grabbed it, I pulled it out of my Mazda 323 GTX. I have one of the little cars, great cars. I was on the forums, Yahoo Groups forums, and they said use this to replace the radiator in the 323 GTX because it works really good. What is it? This is a Honda Civic manual transmission, 3-core or 3-row radiator, all aluminum. They're cheap. They're like 80 bucks. And I'm sitting there going, huh. And I'm looking at it going, they're really thick. I wonder what the capacity would be, rough estimate, to see if I could replace this unit. And I looked it up and I did it, and it's 417.38 cubic inches for this setup. I'm sitting there going, all right. It's not even remotely close to even this. So, what do we got to do? Well, this is out of the question because it's so much shorter. This is 14 inches high in the core, and this was 19 inches high in the core. So if I build a mount for that and it doesn't cool the car, I got to cut the mount out and redo it all. And it has a radiator cap on it, so I can't have, I won't have a remote reservoir to keep the remote reservoir above the cylinder head to maintain the proper coolant level. And putting this thing up really high, it's a double-edged sword, but who knows what I'm going to go to, but this thing's out of the running. This thing's out of the running because I don't want a second radiator, and I don't like this. So we're going to go with this, and what this means is this is expandable. I can set this thing up for a stock location, stock everything, but have the ability to move forward because I have a feeling that I'm going to have to use a double core one of these. Basically, calling up a radiator company and saying, okay, well, this is 1.5 inches wide. Okay, give me 3 inches wide by such and such with these outlets in it, and they'll build me one. And it'll probably be anywhere from $500 to $1,000. That might be a bullet I have to bite, and that's a bullet you might have to bite. You have to keep the car cool. But that's beside the point. So there's my thought processes on these radiators. Let me show you what I'm going to use to mount these things. So here's a system that's used to mount the 4000 Quattro, Quattro, all of the Quattros radiators, pretty much. What they did was they took 2 pieces of sheet metal, crimped it, bent it. You can see right here, there's a slot with a hole that goes, this is inverted, but goes right here, it bolts onto it. And there's a machine bushing right here, which people say, why is it a machine? It's an isolator bushing. You'll find these a lot on machine parts. It unscrews. There's a 8x125 thread pitch washer with a welded thing right here and another washer, and it's vulcanized together. That's what they use. That's what machines rest on for anti-vibration mounts. But let's get to this. This is, see, I dug it out of the pile. This is where the engine mount was, and this is where the radiator mount. I'm not going to use this. You want to know why? Because it's all welded on, and I don't want to do that. So into the pile it goes for me to use it on something else. What I am going to use is, what I am going to use is this. This, I believe, came off a Subaru. Looks like a Subaru. I can't remember, but oh, whatever. The only thing this does is it's me not having to build a plate onto this. What it is you can take a look at the actual height. Where this bottom is, where the mount is, right there. You see, it's pretty much exact as a distance from here. So that's another thing in car land culture that you're gonna, or not culture, but car land putting togetherness that you're gonna find is like most things are all the same. But what this has, it has a really nice gusset right here, which I really like. The metal is much thicker than this. It will be heavier, but it has holes for a mounting system that goes into the side. And that's what I'm going to do with that, because that radiator is not going to be in the original place. It's going to be tilted to give us expandability out. What I'm going to use is one of the mounts that we cut up. All it is a couple of capted, welded nuts. This came off, I believe, was a Ford engine mount. I can't remember, but it was just in the pile. I saw it. It had 10 by 1.5 threaded pitch nuts in there, welded in already. And I'm just going to cut this up. It's going to go right in there. So on that, if I need to change this mount to build it for a custom radiator, unbolt it, redo it on the bench, bolt it back up. No cutting there. And that way, also, these nuts, these are, for a Mark III Jetta. Watch out, because I try and use the same head thicknesses. Like the Mark IIIs had these in either 16s or 17 wrenches that fit on the top, 17 hex heads or 16 hex heads. I pull out of my thing and I make sure and pick out all 17s, because generally I want everything on that car either a 13, 15, 17, or 19, I don't want any 12s, I don't want any 14s, unless it's like, that's what has to be there, because I don't have anything else. But this, I try, part of the whole thing is working on these cars is like, if you can have just one wrench do a lot of things, that's perfect. Instead of having a billion different wrenches to have them do it, unfortunately, that's the German way, which I don't really particularly like, but hey, what am I to say? But let's first cut this up, and then we can figure out where we're going to put it over there. And we have to do one more thing. Let me show you what I'm going to do with the radiator to make it even more expandable, with the limited space that we have inside that Sport Quattro. Now that we've decided on what radiator that we're going to be putting in the Sport Quattro, we know it's going to be relatively stock location. It's going to be skewed, but we have to have the ability to expand this radiator as much as we can possibly do. At least, double the thickness. But we're also trying, because we only have so much room. Now, we have to look at front and back. Front, not a problem, but it's all going to be pretty much, shrouded and where you're going to be, redirecting the air. Second is we have to figure out, we need more room on the back. How are we going to do that? Well, take a look. This is the fan shroud unit and fan that came with the 4000 Quattro, and they came on Quattros. They came on all of them. They're all virtually identical. It's 1970s technology. To me, it's not that great. Back in the day, in the rally cars, what we used to do is take this 20 amp, I believe it's a 20 amp motor, and put the 5000 40 amp motor in. We had to cut these and expand them out and make it all work, but just what we did. And that was the only option we had available, really. And I was so much into the Audi fold, it's just like, yeah, if Audi built it, it's got to be great. Well, not really, because the more you look into other cars, the more you realize, they did some stuff fantastic, did other stuff that was just absolutely, what the hell were they thinking? But that's beside the point. What are we going to do to expand our possibility of expansion on this radiator? And it's this. This came off of a 3-liter H6 Legacy. I took the 3-liter and put it in a GC8. Freaking cool car. But that's beside the point. This radiator is modern technology. This came from a 2003, and I consider that 2000 technology, and this is 80s technology. This is probably built before. This was built before, but you see what I'm trying to say. So what we got to do is we got to take this shroud off and try and fit this thing, because I already basically put it on the back side. It fits pretty well. I just have to trim it up. But let me pull this radiator shroud off, and when you do this, because these parts are so old, remember, use your ratchet first, because if you sit there and you turn in the thing, and just like it's kind of binding up, that's when you know to put penetrating fluid on it, work it back and forth, so you don't break the mounting tab, because you might be needing it. Somebody says, oh, just break it. No, just save the mount, because who knows, we might have to use the mount, and it might match up to this, and it'd be great. But we don't know yet, or I don't know yet. So let me pull this shroud off, and let's try and fit this radiator and shroud to this motor and see what to this radiator, and let's see what happens. Now that we've determined that we know the radiator we're going to have, and we know the radiator fan we're going to have, now we have to mount it. And some of the hardest things that people always, see is like, oh, my first cut. It's like, yeah, I know. It's terrible. So what are we going to do? Well, if you take a look at this fan basically draws air all the way over to this edge right here. And it goes all the way over to this edge right here. This is a flat plate. I believe this sits either on, I don't think it sits on the side. It might sit on the side, but I think it fits flat on the bottom. I can't remember. But we have to get rid of this and make it fit flat. We are going to be cutting these tabs off anyway, because they are of no use to us. There's no tab over here. There's a tab right here. So I can't make a bar to make these things fit. We have a tab right here and a tab right here. We have two places, that right here and right here. It's all the way across. I can make a bar to bolt these things to it. So that's stationary. And also I can put a tab from here to here, or from here to here, just to make sure everything lays flat and it doesn't move. That's pretty much it. It's really not hard. You just have to look about what to cut and then go from there. And we'll make a small mounting tab here just to make sure everything sits flush. That's kind of the deal. So, all right, let me. I got my cutter right here. I'm gonna go grab the air hose right there, and I'll just cut it up. Take a look right here. This is where the shroud pulls all the air in, and it's going to come. This is the first capillary tube right there. So it's on the side. It's pulling full air around this capillary tube all the way to the end of the radiator. On the other side, it's shrouded. Here's the capillary tube, and this one is definitely fully pulled through. But hopefully, this, as you see, it stops right there, should draw the air in. Seeing how it's on the other side of this, not as efficient as, but I'm going to have to live with it. Let's do the mounting system. Now that we have the fan laying flat on there, we have to figure out the first mount. The first mount is going to be the toughest mount. What it is, here's the hole for the original fan shroud, and here's the other hole for the original fan shroud. We're going to be using this because they're pretty much exactly the same distance from the top of the radiator down. So it makes it look nice. What are we going to use? Well, seeing how these original mounts here are pretty rugged, this is part of the drafting table that we cut up for the car. Now, I'm going to first drill a hole right here, slice this, and pull this up off the radiator. What does that do? That, when you have it right here, it restricts airflow. You bring it up, it does not restrict airflow. So I'm trying to maximize the utilization or maximize every single bit of this radiator by pulling this thing up and then having it go back down to here. I mean, I can do washers and all that stuff, but I think that's a pain in the butt. And I think it looks like shit. So let me go get a drill. I'm going to start drilling, cutting, and bending up to make it all work. And then we'll cut holes for the mounting bolts and put the mounting bolts in. Here's the lower mount, bolted on. As you saw, I chased the threads. You know, that's kind of what you want to do just to get it. I chase all the threads. I probably didn't put any on, you know, on film. But mounts are, you know, I mean, it's not going anywhere. Whether or not these are going to be the original mount, these are going to be the final mounts. I'm not going to weld this, or because I try to leave as much extra as possible, because I'll probably cut, bend up. You know, I don't really know yet. But this seems to be a decent working tab. This seems to be a decent working mount right there. I'll weld probably the nuts on the back just as capture nuts, but that's farther down the road. The main thing is the mount's on, these mounts are on, it's in position where it's going to be finally. Let's put it in the car and start building the mounts for the bottom, you know, and that way we can get that welded on. After that, the intercooler. Here's the original placement of the radiator. I never cut out the side mount, so that's where it's stationed. What it is, we need expansion, okay? And we have plenty of room to expand straight out 1.5 inches. But we're going to run into problems with the intake system for the intercooler and so forth for the intake manifold. How are we going to do that? Well, if we keep it the same height and go like this, we have plenty of room for pipes to come down here for the intercooler. And we can bring it back a little bit, and we have plenty of room for, we have the 1.5 inch room, or almost 2 inches, well, at least 1.5 inch, 1.75 room for me to put, you know, a larger radiator and keep the same fan, everything. But the problem that we kind of run into is when I put the hood down, what it is it clears. Don't get me wrong, it clears, but the expansion possibility is my problem. I think it might we might have a little problem with that. And you have to remember, when I put the motor in, I put it about 1/2 inch lower down inside the chassis just to keep the weight down, you know, especially with the mounts and all that stuff, trying to get, you know, build more room in it. So what I want to do is I'm going to lower this about 1 inch. And what it does is this side mount down here, pull this up, this side mount rests on the chassis rail. So I can just make tabs and bolt it in there, you know, and that way I have an original mount already in. All I have to do is bolt into the chassis. This way, I can have this thing at an angle. As you can see, I got at least 2 inches of clearance here to expand out the radiator. I have a big space right here to allow my intake manifold to go down, and I can change the filler necks and all that stuff. That doesn't bother me. And I can also, you know, just turn them out and just weld it onto the chassis, and we'll do that here in just a second. But that's pretty much how I envision this is going to work. Whether or not it's going to work is another thing, you know. And let me, how about this? Let me show you down underneath what exactly is going on down there. Now that we have the radiator in the position that we want it, right here is where the kink in the chassis rail is. What I want to do is just, you know, keep this right about here, which is fine. It builds me a little room. I can actually go down a little bit more because this is not actually sitting on the rail. We have plenty of room here to expand out. This might have to be trimmed up a little bit down here for an expansion of 2 inches, but it doesn't really bother me because it doesn't really do anything. We also have room here, so I can stick my hand in there and change the bulb on a light bulb so I don't start tearing stuff out. This is the original mount for the radiator in the 4000 coupe, you know, on all of them actually. This is what it looks like. Well, I'm going to slice this right here to get it out of there, then trim it down enough so it fits and bolts onto here, then weld it on. You know, it'll be relatively small. It won't be in anybody's way. The lights, you know, go to about here, which is fairly shallow. And that way we can go down, then do the bottom mount, get rid of my jack, and then we can start working on the intercooler. Here we are at the bottom mount. What I want to do with this is I'm trying to make as least amount of cuts as possible. Now, this is the mount that we're going to use. So if we screw this up inside in here, we can bring this over and look, it fits right there. So what we have to do is we have to grind there, up there, and grind all this so we can weld it in. Then, once this is welded in, this has to be cut off and has to be folded down. So if it's going to be folded down, it's going to be like a cut right there, and it's going to be like this to fold onto that edge, and we got to grind all of this. Then we can use this over here and build up from there and see what happens. But let's first grind this, and I'm going to give a big cut there and just cut this straight off right there so I can weld inside here, weld this side to here, and weld this side to here. That'll give me my first mount, you know, locked down. And then I can utilize this nutsert over here and build up onto there and have a pretty stiff mount. So let me grab the grinder and do that. Get to work on the other one. I'm back from the trash bin now, and this is kind of what I got. Just a piece of steel right here. Came off some machinery part. This is a rear sway bar link from a Mercur XR4 Ti. You can tell it's really small. They were useless anyway, but this fits. You can't really see it at that angle because I can't really, you know, bring the camera any other way, but you'll see that this, if I cut it at a diagonal right here, matches up with this. And then if I cut it right here as a diagonal here, it'll go onto the chassis. This is the same width as what I cut off. And what I'll do is I'll keep this, cut it right here, and weld it right onto the chassis right there, or I'll run it down here. I'll probably just cut off a little bit, test fit, you know, and that way it'll go right inside. Then I'll grind it off and weld it all up. Should be all right. It'll give me 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. I'll box it all in if I have to. If I, you know, after I pull everything apart and look at it, say, ah, look better boxed in. Well, that's what I'll do. It's no biggie. And if it don't work, I'll cut it off and redo it. And on the back one, just mark where I want to cut it. So if I cut it right there and diagonal down to here, well, it looks like I'm just going to have to cut it straight through this. Right there. Cut it right down through here. And that should give me match up with the length of what's cut in the back. And we'll start right here. See what happens. We're now at the point of talking about intercooler systems. What am I going to use to do this? What do I have kicking around to make it work? Let's first take a look at what originally was in the Audi 200 Turbo 20 valve in 1991. This is what it was. This is the standard intercooler. It's a straight through. Basically, they used a large pipe that came out of the turbocharger, this large pipe right here into the intercooler, passed through this accordion pipe right here, into the intake tube right here, then into the manifold. That's the reason why I left this on and didn't take it up, so I wanted to show you this as part of the intercooler system that it came with. And as you can tell, they took the hot air from the turbocharger, brought it through this pipe, cooled it down, went through the accordion, heated it back up again. Even though there was a heat shield here, it still heated it up a little bit, because usually heat shield transfers, you know, most heat shields, you know, take about 70% of the heat away, but you still get more, you know, heat put into the pipe than into the intake manifold. As you can tell, I'm not a fan. And it's actually a fairly good sized intercooler if you take a look at it, because it's really thick. It's, you know, to me the core is probably 3.5 inches wide. I'm not sure how long it is, but for instance, looking at the 10 valve turbo, what they used, like the Audi 200 or 5000 Turbo Quattro intake, Turbo Quattro 10 valve, this is the intercooler that came out of those. What happened was the turbocharger went in here, it went down, it passed through right there, up through here, because there's a dividing plate right there, and back into a accordion tube, into the intake manifold, right over the hot manifold, exhaust manifold. Not a fan. And if you take a look, this, it's kind of hard to put there, but if it's right there is the intercooler core, and this is about 1.5 inches smaller on the core. So they, you know, they were good, you know, they wanted to increase the cooling capacity for the increase, you know, in power in the engine. Now, what I was originally planning on doing on this car was what I did a long time ago on another rally car, but I'll show you here in just a second. This is what I was going to do. I have these two old plates that I built up a long time ago and just had them kicking around. And I have 1, 2 of these, of those 5,000 intercooler cores. And I was going to put these things together like this, put the end plates on, like that, and drill the hole and make an intercooler. Big old honking intercooler. And you're probably sitting there saying, that won't work, you know, and, you know, it just, you know, too much lag, too much lag. No, you didn't have too much lag at all. Let me show you, because I know from personal experience. Let me take you over and show you what I mean. This is what I mean. These are two 5,000 intercooler cores. I used this in an Audi 20 valve turbo rally car that I had, my very first rally car. And as you can see, I got into a little mishap. This is where the front pulley is, the harmonic balancer. This is the diameter of the tree that I went through at Mount Washington and went off the side of Mount Washington. And this was the triangle on top of the car. Well, that was an experience. Now that we know, I have done it, and it's not that bad for lag, and it actually worked. But let's head back over to the car and show you what I'm actually going to use for it. And the great reveal is a fake RS 500 Cosworth intercooler. This is a Chinese-made one. Pretty much, I bought it. I have a couple of Sierra Cosworths, of Sierra RS Cosworths, not Mercurs changed over, but they were the real one. They are the real ones. Actually, one of them's a real one. The other one is a 2-liter Gia that's left-hand drive that came from Czechoslovakia. That I put a full Cosy setup in it, but it's essentially the same chassis. It's the European chassis. Now, but I bought this to do it, and it won't work. And any of you Cosy guys out there that want to put one of these, Chinese radiator or Chinese intercoolers in there, don't. Was it this one or this one that didn't line up? It was just terrible. So I wouldn't even put it. I even tried it on one of my Escort Cosworths, and it didn't work. All right. Well, I think I found a place to put it. What we're going to do, the way the Ford was set up is set up like this. The way I'm going to do it is set up like that. Because I want the turbocharger to pump into this pipe. I'm going to have to cut it and readjust it, for the turbocharger. And I want it to come out here and go into the manifold over there. That lessens the actual amount of travel and distance the air is going to be going. This is probably 40% larger than the stock original, because you have to remember, this is about half the size, even probably a little bit less than half. It's probably, it's not a third, but it's, I don't know what you would call it, but, it's something like that, because if you take a look at them, the cores on those are really, really thick. But who cares? This is the way I want to go. Well, what we got to do this intercooler is we're going to fit it right here, and it's going to go in, it's going to mount. But one of the things I want to do, I need to get this intercooler, I'm trying to avoid cutting any of the Sport Quattro bodywork. So I'm going to try to help me as much as I can to drive the intercooler as close as I can to the engine. Now, having the intercooler close to the engine, we still have to worry about taking the belt off and being able to get it over this harmonic balancer. Now, what I need to do is we're going to shorten this harmonic balancer. I'm going to use a different one just in case if I mess up and doesn't really work. All right, well, I'll use this. But let's give it a try. Let's make this harmonic balancer a single pulley for this. And you probably wondered down here, take a look. They drilled a lot of holes here. This is to balance the actual harmonic balancer. And there's also a rubber coating inside here. And you're probably thinking, to me, you're going to reduce the amount of adhesion, for the coating as you bring it back here. But I'm also reducing a lot of the weight. And if I get rid of a bunch of weight here, then the balancing won't be as bad. I mean, there might be a little bit of wobble in it. I don't know, because I have never tried it. But this is an experimental car. It's a kit car. Let's experiment with a harmonic balancer. So let me show you what I'm going to use. I'm not going to use this balancer to start. I'm going to use another one off a 10 valve. So let me go grab that, and let's try and cut one up and see how it works. The first thing we have to do in making a Leighton pulley, if you want to call it, or a hillbilly pulley. Well, first thing we have to do is we have to get the timing belt cog off. And as you can see, this is a pretty rusty hunky junk. And I'm going to try and get these cap head screws out. They're pretty rusty. And I think the only chance I have of doing it is using this. This is what they call a impact driver. What it is you can put it right on the cap head screw and I use a drilling hammer and just bang the stuff out of it. And when you hit it, what happens is when it goes down, this turns, can't do it, but it turns it out because it's spring loaded, because it bounces back. And that's, about the only way I think I can do it without destroying the pulley. Hopefully Hopefully it'll work, so let's give it a shot. Oh, there we go. Came right out. There's your timing belt cog or pulley, if you want to call it that. We're over here at the bandsaw, and we now have to cut the pulley. How are we going to do it? Well, we need to have it in the bandsaw. And with it such a small item like this, and it's round, it's very hard to clamp onto anything. So I got to use basically a jig to put it in the bandsaw. This is the largest piece of tubing I have, and it's all cut square, and I need to have this balancer on here in order to put it in the bandsaw. I put a bunch of flat stock in there so I can adjust it to put it exactly where I want the bandsaw to cut. How am I going to attach it to this? Well, I got a piece of all threaded rod, 1/2 inch. I'm just going to go through here, with some big washers. I want it on this side because this is where I'm going to be cutting it. And let me grab the flat stock. This is the trim that's on the bottom because this is actually, won't actually fit. So I want this to be like that. And as you can see right here, it's all a flat surface. If I can do this, put the washers on it. We now have a perpendicular surface to cut. And then when it gets down like halfway or a quarter of the way through or halfway, or just when it, goes into the, into the open part of the center and that, I'm just going to turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it. That way I can get a nice even cut so it's much easier on the lathe. Let's blast it out right now. Let's go turn it up on the lathe. Well, what do you think? I think it's pretty cool. Now that the belt is off, pulley is loose, I put it back on there. What you want to do is right here, there's a little nub right here. This denotes top dead center. And what you want to do is turn the crank pulley to that point, and there's a mark right on here. This is my handy dandy crank holding tool, a piece of pipe cut up, plus stuff like that goes right in there. Yeah, you line that right up, that mark with this mark, that way it's top dead center. Next thing, I'm going to try and do it without taking the belt off. So, it worked probably 20% of the time, but that's the only thing. What you got to do is, first thing, you got to pull out all of these. Yeah, there we go. Shouldn't have lost time. It's right there. Oh man. Now let's clean this junk out before we put the other pulley on. Now that this is all cleaned, this is the pulley that we pulled off. take a look at the size of this step right here, or this output shaft collar almost, if you want to call it that. It's pretty big. When I cut the one on the bandsaw and on the lathe, it's this. It's from an earlier one, and if you take a look, I'd never noticed this ever. This is a good 3 or 4 mil, actually, longer in depth. So I wonder if this is used to pull and align the timing belt case or timing belt cog wheel out, and then bolt it, and affix it to the crankshaft. That's the only thing I'm thinking of, because if you take a look at the timing wheel, at this one, because this is a square tooth one, so it's an early version. If you take a look, is rust on the inside, which means there was no contact on the actual, there's no witness marks for contact on the drive shaft. So it looks like it pulls it off of the drive shaft, which I never knew until I started doing this. Luckily, what I did is I cut up another one like this, same thing, same distance. So this must have been from the AAN motor, the 7A motor, sorry, the normally aspirated 20 valve. And that's pretty much what I'm going to use. So we're just going to use this, bolt it on, and we're going to get to the mounting the intercooler. Well, belt drive assembly is on. We have the alternator in the final position, the power steering pump in the final position. Not done. We have to finish the mount, which means it has to include a lifting hook on that mount for this engine. We have to have braces that go to this bolt, change this bolt to a 13mm hex head. So we use 2 wrenches only, to pull the alternator belt off quickly and easily and adjust it. The back side of the power steering pump and the front side both need brackets to right here and right to the end of the block where the original mount was. That is going to be easy as to be, because it's just a couple pieces of metal right in, no problem. But it guarantees this mount, if it's all braced, guarantees it's not going to move. Any flexing in the system will allow the belt to pop off, and we don't want that. We want to keep everything compact, tight, and relatively rigid, so the belt has no place except on the pulleys to go. Now, the pulley is all trimmed up, affixed, and let me go grab the intercooler so we can put this on and get ready to start fitting the bodywork. Well, we need to slice this straight down, pretty much, and get rid of all of this. The intercooler is now set for height and depth. Height, pretty much I want it level with the frame rail on this thing right here. It's kind of the way I just wanted it to look. We can raise it up a little higher. I think that might work. Like that. It's a little bit above, and the reason why is because the grommet will make it sit flush right here, because this is a grommet that's going in here. It'll sit flush to the rail that comes right off. No problem. What do we have? We have the height set and we have the depth set. The depth is the distance in between the intercooler and the engine pulley. Actually, what I call the engine pulleys, not the actual physical engine. What I used was a 3/4 inch pine board. I put it on the bottom. Seeing how I know all the pulleys are flat, I go up flat against this. This is the height, so it's directly straight up and down. This sets exactly where my tab is going to be. We have to make sure and save this because the hood latch mechanism is on these. All this can be modified just as long as it's braced in to support this latch. Now the intercooler is going to be set up on tabs that come out this way and brought back, in this way and just, braced into this section. Then we need to fit everything else. But let's first grab the grinder. I'm going to grind off some of this and let's set the tabs and I'll show you how we're doing with the grommets. This is what we're going to use for the mounting system. All it is you'll see one piece of steel right here. It's just a couple of rubber mounts. It just slides through and goes like this. Now, if we're going to have the mount on the bottom, so if we have this right there, it's just going to hold it in like that. The mount is taking most of the weight. This is just to bake it so it doesn't go anywhere. We don't need a very big screw. If I was going to hold it like from the bottom up, I'd use, instead of an M6, I'd use an M8. That's what I would use. But I don't need it. And one thing is, it's just like I want to pull it right off, boom, right out, slide it straight out. I was going to use, what was it? This right here, but that would entail me having to lift the intercooler up and sliding it out that way. I mean, you can use these, it's fine. I think this will be faster. Because if it just pulls it and you just slide it straight out, you slide it back in, it's all done. What am I going to use for the mount? It's, for the base plate. I am probably going to use this right here. These are mounts for a Mark III or Quattro, one of the safety bars that goes across the interior. This is what fits in the side. I save them just because, they're braced. They have nutserts. It's kind of cool. You could cut this, I'm going to cut this, put it right here, just like that. It's all set up in that way. I think it's going to look pretty cool, and I'll probably brace the back side, but this will get us going. Let me cut this up, because I'm going to cut it straight down the middle. I'm going to use the other side over there, but actually, no, I'll probably cut it right there, right here, so I can grind it right in. See how they compress out a little bit? And it's not going any further. And it's a pretty good mount. Well, that looks like it's tacked in. I have to, plate it and stuff like that, but I'm satisfied. Let's finish up the episode and we're done. What have we accomplished besides a mess? Well, we now have the ability to put the front bodywork on and final fit everything and adjust everything, because we have the doors on, the quarters on, rockers on. Then we can go forward. We'll get that completely fitted up for a final time. What do we have here? Because we had to put the intercooler in and decide what we're going to use. I had to go backwards, to do the belt drive, to do the radiator, to do all this small stuff, to get in a position to where when we put that on. I didn't do the oil cooler. The oil cooler is going to be dependent on how the bodywork fits, because the oil cooler is going to be a lot smaller. Put it anywhere. We have to have a bottom rack for the bottom of this anyway. So see it wobbles around like that on those mounts. Just a stiffener mount, it's all it is. We'll have that all set up with the oil cooler, because I'm not going to use the stock one, because I hate the stock one. I'm not sure what I'm going to use for it, but I'll figure something out. But next time, we'll start putting on all the bodywork to make it fit. To make everything line up and work. That's a big thing. So, other than that, thank you very much for showing up. I'm just a hillbilly doing this, and I'm so glad you like me doing it. I don't know what to say, but you can do it. It's just put your mind to it. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 3B. I mean, I bought a 2005 Rabbit that has that, was it the 07K? Is that whatever the 2.5 liter 5-cylinder is? If people are going to be using that, let me know, because I'll do a video. I want to pull the motor in and see how inexpensive I can mate it up to one of these chassis, you know, because I want to do it to a 4000 I have kicking around and make that into like an everyday car. It would be friggin' cool having that motor. I think it would be, and if people would want to see it, well, I'll divert a little bit and go on to it. You know, I'll let the other one sit for a month or so and try and do that. But other than that, thank you very much for showing up. It's actually starting to look like something. Pretty happy, you know. And you know, the intake manifold, that'll be the last thing we do. That's kind of it, because the intake manifold has got to be completely cut up, channels sectionalized, all that stuff. So we might as well have everything in, and we'll tailor that manifold to the final product. You know, it's got to be cut up and welded anyway, so we might as well have the most amount of stuff installed and have it go around it, and only do it once, instead of, you know, cutting up the manifold, doing it, then having to make some different brackets for this and a different hose for that. And, you know, if it's all in there, you do it all around and there you go. You know, but we still have good maintenance abilities on this car. 2 wrenches to change the bolt, to change the belt, alternator, and the power steering pump. You know, well, no, it's be three or 4 wrenches because you have the lines going to it. But other than that, it's no biggie. Well, from this hillbilly excursion into the outiness of Sport Quattro. Oh man, we will get this thing done. Bound and determined, we will get this thing done. So thank you very much for showing up. Remember, you can do it. I'm nothing special, you know, so you can do it. Trust yourself, all right? Thank you very much for showing up. I'll see you later. Bye now.